So welcome to the launch of the CIPA project. It's a good day. We hope to have a good event today. So all protocols observed. My name is Christine Nanjala Smiyu. I am an economist, an East Fellow, and a NIERA member. Just for the sake of those who are new to NIERA in attendance, so NIERA is an acronym for Network of Impact Evaluation Researchers in Africa. So the membership of this network constitutes of East Africa Social Science Translation Fellows. So these fellows go for training in impact evaluation at the Center for Effective Global Action at the University of California in Berkeley for 1 semester. So basically, we learn about impact evaluation methodology, how to generate quality evidence and inform policy. So after we finished the training, we joined the NIERA. And the role of NIERA is a network of African scholars who advance the use of impact evaluation, decision-focused impact evaluation of social and development programs to improve the quality of people in Africa and beyond. So how we achieve this is we use 3 arms. So the first arm is for capacity building. The second arm is evidence generation. And the third arm is policy outreach. So today's event is about CIPA project. It's an example of capacity building arm of NIERA. CIPA just means contextualizing impact evaluation pedagogy in Africa. So what we endeavor to achieve in this program is we embed impact evaluation methodology training in the curriculum of some selected institutes and university, especially in East Africa. So to this end, we are grateful to the supporters, the SASP Foundation, the Helwed Foundation, partners, University of Utrecht and USIU Africa, and collaborating institutions like JKUAT, KU, Kenyatta University in Kenya, AMREF International University, APHRC African Health and Population Research Center. We are grateful to Barara University in Uganda. There is Policy Studies Institute in Ethiopia. There is University of Rwanda in Rwanda and many others. So this is a virtual event, and anytime we have a virtual event, we need some housekeeping rules. So the first rule is this. It is a networking event. We need to network, talk to each other. So the first rule is we will prefer that you turn on your videos so that we can see your face. We can connect with who you are. When you're speaking, people can see you, but mute your microphone. So you turn on your video, but you mute your microphone so that we have that, you know, when someone is talking, we don't have interference. Some of us are at home, there are babies around, they will be shouting and so forth. So you turn on your video, but you mute your microphone. So, but if you want to talk or ask a question, make a comment, raise any concern, you raise up your hand, and the person in charge or running that activity will give you an opportunity to talk. So without further ado, so we can start the event, and I will welcome Mr. Suleiman Asman, the Regional Director, East Africa Innovation of Poverty Action, to give us an opening remark. Welcome, Mr. Suleiman Asman.
Thank you so much. It gives me great pleasure to be part of this conversation, which I hold like it's timely, but also a necessary one. I don't know if I can present, because is it possible to hand over the ability to present?
Yes, sir. Let's
Okay.
enable that.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Suleiman. I think it's enabled.
Okay, so as I said, it's really a great opportunity. I also hope this is the beginning of very many positive ideas and exchange collaborations that will lead into what we really want out of this start of conversations. My name is Suleiman Asman. I work with IPA, which is Innovations for Poverty Action. This is a research and policy organization that was founded in the US, but has branches in most of the other countries. And the reason probably why I am very happy to be part of this conversation is that IPA has been involved in a lot of the impact evaluations of potential programs that or policies that actually can change people's lives. And now that we talk about impact evaluations, I think this is probably the most appropriate thing to do. So I'll take a few minutes to talk about IPA, and then I'll move into why or what IPA is doing in collaboration with NIERA, with other institutions, to really try to bring on board local researchers and build their capacity to be able to actively participate in research. So IPA, as I mentioned, was formed in the US in 2002 and has been involved in a lot of the program impact evaluations across the globe. And one of the reasons why IPA was established was the realization that a lot of money was going into development, but with little impact. And so what we propose to do and what we continue doing is to work with researchers, policymakers, and governments to design and evaluate potential solutions, but then after we generate the evidence, mobilize the policymakers to use that evidence with the hope that that will create better programs and policies that will end poverty. And that means that once we have evidence on what works, we invest in the programs that actually work, rather than trying 20 different things with very minimal impact. I already mentioned this, that, you know, the way we work, we collaborate with academics, who I think most of us are here today, service providers, government and funders, to really evaluate some of the proposed programs with the intention of understanding which ones work and why they work. And for those that don't work, maybe try to tweak them around and understand why they don't work. Currently, IPA works in 22 countries, like permanent residents. We work with more than 600 affiliated researchers, but most of them who are here, and a lot of credit for where I am right now lies with them. And we are working with lots of implementing institutions with more than 850 programs already evaluated. But I really wanted to switch and talk about researcher diversification strategy, partly which touches to what we are discussing here today. And really, the problem is that if you look at the statistics, you wouldn't be shocked, I guess, and that's why probably such events are here, for us to rethink our strategy in terms of how can we get more local researchers involved in our research. And with only 1% of the world total output of scientific research coming from African universities, that is a worrying trend that all of us would be interested to find out how best can we turn around that. As I said, it is the right thing to do. It is the appropriate thing to do right now. But worse, even if you look at the African, if you think about African studies, they are also still not being produced by African researchers. So more, even probably a bigger reason to worry about. So what we are doing at IPA, we've gone back to this question and we are trying to understand, why don't we have most of the national researchers involved in our project? And there is the question of heterogeneity, which is most of the African professors really don't get involved in collaborations. And those who do, they are obviously more than demanded, and so their bandwidth is always constrained. But there's also the question of networking with the right people at the right time, and substantively involving them in research. So when most of the best ones are already overcommitted, we don't end up working with them mostly. So for successful collaborations, we will need to have researchers who substantively actually contribute to research, rather than really a requirement by the donor or countries where we work in just to mark off, just tick the box for the sake of it. But number two, we need to invest in long-term relationships, right? So it shouldn't be like, just kind of transactional. Once we have a project that we need a local researcher, we bring them in, and then after that, we get them out, or we don't continue with the relationship longer beyond the project. But this also means that we need to find the right partners and how best to engage with them, make sure this is successful. And it's obvious that with local content, local researchers' involvement in some of these impact evaluations, we, of course, will do the right thing, which I mentioned at the beginning. We address the inequalities in terms of the production of research output. But number two, we guarantee that the quality of research will be higher, given that, with the local context being brought in by the local researchers, this leads to understanding beyond just the theoretical ideas that we develop during research kind of thinking, but really bring into that the local context. And number two, we also agree that if local researchers are involved, there is higher appetite by the government, or probably potential for them to take on some of the research findings, as opposed to what is mostly classified as fly-in and fly-out researchers. So this, of course, ties very well to what we are discussing today in terms of how can we improve the capacity of local researchers to be actively, substantively involved in research work. And probably, moving forward, we'll see more and more uptake of research by government agencies and other implementing organizations, but mostly really have more researchers involved. And so I want to stop there, but maybe just, again, learning from what I have over the years. And I mentioned Professor Yost, for example, Professor Tafnit and Michael Kramer, who are all speaking today, really pushed me into this arena in terms of development and impact evaluations. And it's been a great experience, right? That is one potential collaboration that has worked out very well, like long-term engagement with researchers who have a lot of experience and learning from them. Let me stop there and wish everyone a great event today. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Mr. Suleiman, for the powerful opening remarks. As we have mentioned, today's focus on how do we best strengthen the capacity of local researchers so that we generate quality evidence to inform policy. So next I will welcome Professor Tavneet Suri, Scientific Director, JPAL Africa, to give us some special remarks. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here and to be here live, given I'm sitting in my parents' house in Nairobi. And it's nice to be back home for a bit at least. So welcome everyone, and really excited to be part of this. And thank you very much for the invite to say a few words, NIERA and Yost and others. It's really a pleasure to be here this morning. I wanted to talk a bit about JPAL, which is the Poverty Action Lab at MIT, the kind of work we've been doing, and more importantly, kind of a bunch of funding that we've been creating for African scholars. And so that's where I'll start, and then I'll talk a bit about my own work in Kenya, if I have time. So I'll keep an eye on the watch because I know I have a limited amount of time. So as Christine mentioned, I'm the Scientific Director for JPAL Africa. JPAL is a network of researchers doing impact evaluations across the developing world. The sort of global headquarters is at MIT in the US at the university, but they have offices in a bunch of countries in the world, and we partner very closely with IPA, which is the organization that Asman is regional director for, and he talked about. And also at JPAL, I wear a couple of other hats. I run a couple of initiatives, and the way we kind of fund impact evaluations. First, we're committed to randomized controlled trials as a way of evaluating policies and evaluating impact. Second, we kind of raise these large pots of money that we then give to researchers to study certain topics. And so I sort of run two of these initiatives. One is an agricultural one. The second one I'd like to talk about more today is called a Digital Finance and Digital Identification Initiative. This initiative kind of thinks about how biometric IDs, which are coming through Kenya and other countries, think Huduma number, right? Even though I still don't have my Huduma number. Speaking of IDs, you know, those sorts of things, are they working? What sort of impacts do they have? Are people, you know, who are hard to reach, are they not getting access? Are we leaving people out of the system by doing sort of biometrics? Those are sort of questions, plus a whole set of questions around digitization and digital payments and digital finance. So this pot of money is to study all those sorts of questions. We kind of post a white paper that talks about the sorts of questions that fit the agenda. And under this initiative, for the first time, JPAL's created an African Scholars piece. This allows African scholars who are based at universities in Africa to apply for funding to us to run randomized controlled trials on these topics. When I'm done speaking, I'll post the link. And we give a whole set of different types of grants: proposal development grants to get you started on an RCT, a pilot grant to get you piloting an RCT, testing the logistics of an intervention, trying to see if this intervention has take up, things like that, and then for also full randomized control trials after a pilot. We have a rolling RFP, which means you can submit anytime. There's no deadlines. I kind of like that. It's nice to have people just apply when they're ready with a proposal. We also have a staff that helps think through the idea, helps write the proposal with you, or helps you give you advice on the proposal. This is an opportunity not just to create collaborations, as Asman talked about, but actually to put funding out there so people can also build entirely local collaborations if they want to, and not have to collaborate with outsiders or people from abroad. And so it's meant to target local researchers and provide them a pot of money to be able to do this sort of research. So hopefully it's helping close the collaboration gap that Asman already talked about a little more. And over the next, I think, year or two, we're going to see similar African Scholars programs. One's just been announced this week, very proud of it. There's a JPAL initiative on jobs, what is it called? Joy Jobs and Opportunities Initiative, I think it is. And it's about youth or unemployment more broadly and how to think through policies that will change employment, unemployment in the African context or in the developing world context. Joy, that initiative, has just added an African Scholars piece as of this week as well. They're advertising a webinar. I'll post the link to that as well in the chat for everybody to understand more about the initiative and the African Scholars program that they've just announced. And we're hoping there'll be more of those coming down the road. So that's my kind of JPAL Africa hat, trying to sort of talk a bit about what opportunities we have available in the funding space for African scholars. Other than that, I'll do 30 seconds on myself because I think I probably have about 30 seconds left. And Joost is looking at me in a way that tells me I only have 30 seconds left. So, I'm actually Kenyan, born and raised in Nairobi, and I do a lot of my research in East Africa. I used to do a bit of work in West Africa, and that's kind of petered out, given we've been doing a lot of projects here. Asman has been a close collaborator of ours of mine in particular, for I want to say 15 years, Asman, maybe, though that makes me feel very old, so I shouldn't have counted how many years, Asman. And I do a lot of work around digitization, mobile money. We've done big studies on M-Pesa and M-Shwari, and we now have a randomized controlled trial of universal basic income running in CIPA and Bomet. And I was actually in Bomet last week, and hopefully in CIPA next week. So if anybody wants to talk about my research, I'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out. I have a very strange name, so Google is not my friend. If you Google me, I'm very easy to find. So please feel free to reach out. If you have questions about JPAL Africa's funding, please reach out. Happy to sort of direct you to the right sources of information. I'll stop there and hand back to Christine if she's around. And thank you so much for the opportunity to say hello this morning.
Thank you very much, Prof, for opening up our minds on the opportunities presented from JPAL Africa. And this year we reach out on you on several issues, the funding, the proposal drafting, and so forth. Thank you very much. So in short while, we will see a video by Professor Klima. Enjoy watching.
Hi, Christine. Actually, we'll play the video after your presentation, so you could proceed to invite Amos. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you for clarification, Jennifer. So we welcome Professor Amos Njuguna to give us some presentation about NIERA and today's project. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, everyone. It's always a pleasure to see colleagues along this space interacting to discuss how we can improve evidence generation and how we can ensure that development programs are working. So welcome everyone to the NIERA launch. As the chair of the network, I just want to make a few remarks and can't agree more with colleagues who've already presented before me. At the onset, let me just mention that the network of impact evaluation researchers in Africa was established in 2018. So we are only about 3 years old and currently comprising of quite a number of fellows, about 32 of us across East Africa, and looking forward to expand. And what keeps us going is the motivation and the passion to use rigorous evaluation approaches, more specifically, impact evaluation approaches in conducting our research and ensuring that we are making a difference. Our mission broadly is to advance decision-focused impact evaluation of development programs. And as has been mentioned, we do this through 3 avenues: capacity building, we do evidence generation, and also policy outreach. And to this end, we collaborate with many organizations. Just to mention a few, the Center for Effective Global Action, CIGA at UC Berkeley, who we say is our main mentor. ID Insight, we drew lots of concepts on decision-focused evaluation from ID Insight. IPA, as Suleiman has talked about, JPAL, 3IE, amongst other organizations, because we exist to collaborate and ensure that we help others achieve their mandate, as well as others helping us to achieve our mandate. Recently, we concluded a needs assessment across 5 East African countries. That's Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya. And the idea was to determine the niche for NIERA and the kind of strategic direction we would take. And so in this endeavor, we went out to determine from the stakeholders' perspective, is there really, what's the demand for impact evaluation and how does that ecosystem look like? Then also looked at the capacity building needs in order for us to be able to respond more effectively. And these results basically showed that, yes, a lot of IE activities are taking place, mostly implemented in partnership with government ministries, and the main areas being health, education, agriculture, energy, trade, industry, and all that. And this impact evaluations are mostly demand driven, especially from development partners who come in and say, look, we need information on social impact, we need information on value for money, with regard to the different projects that we are supporting. We want to see how can the results that we have already obtained, can these results be scaled? Can we get greater impact out of them? So that's where most of the demand is. But also, we noticed that government agencies are now increasingly asking for evidence. Of course, institutions of higher learning, such as universities that are within the network, are also asking for this information. And therefore, colleagues, there is need to build substantial capacity to be able to undertake rigorous evaluation and support this demand that is already there, and say, look, what we are doing works, what we are doing can be scaled, this cannot work, and all those kind of outcomes that come out of impact evaluations. And it's important to note that these results were unanimous across the 5 countries that we did. And basically, this is what informed our programming. But other than the positive side, we also, as Suleiman has alluded to already, issues that came out included aspects of inadequate capacity, technical capacity at the onset, lack of awareness, limited evidence generation, that a lot of research that is taking place is still not anchored on rigorous impact evaluations. And we also noticed that when you start talking to different people in the ecosystem, they tend to misconceive the elements of monitoring and evaluation with impact evaluation, in addition to resource constraints. So it is these gaps that informed us to come back and say, oh, what is it that we learn? So from this needs assessment, we have learned that it will take collaboration of everyone to maximize on the returns of investment in IE studies. Colleagues, you'll agree with me that impact evaluation studies take a lot of time. We have to invest a lot of money. We have to invest a lot in terms of communication, and it's only fair that returns on these investments are realized through the different platforms. As such, building capacity can significantly improve what we do, generating evidence, and then getting to policy and communication. But then we would need to get everyone to participate in this. So researchers can't work in isolation. Policymakers can't sit in their own corner and hope that researchers will give them the kind of research results expected without creating an input into them, development partners, government, and even the media, who would most likely base their stories based on credible research generated through these approaches. As such, NIERA therefore comes in to fill that gap, and of course working with other partners, because as I said earlier, as NIERA, we are very categorical. We don't just want to go and replicate or copy what anyone else is doing. Rather, we want to enrich, understand that this is the gap, this is the niche, and then bring it up, work on it, and where we need help from others, we still ask for that. If we need to adapt certain tools and from others, we adapt. If we need to develop new tools, we develop, and that kind of thing. And in addition to that, develop these tools that all of us use. As we move on and to enhance the capacity building efforts, because capacity is an issue. Today, we also launch an e-resource center. This center has been developed by our fellows. The center has contextualized to the needs of the various audiences. So one of the ways that we have plugged into this gap is by saying, hold on, what is it that a researcher needs? What is it that a person in the media needs within the context of impact evaluation? And our fellows have responded to that need and provided an e-resource center that is on that is really available for everyone, on very simple registration. Anyone can use the kind of materials that are generated. Anyone can get on board and get into a community of practice, have some kind of discussions going on with regard to different aspects, and everyone within the ecosystem benefits. Therefore, researchers, journalists, program implementers, and literally everyone in this space, including students, will find the materials quite useful. The interactive forum that is enabled through the Resource Center will also enhance the creation of networking forums. I urge everyone to interact with these materials, and researchers will particularly be interested in the Contextualizing Impact Evaluation Pedagogy in Africa program that my friend and colleague, Professor Uslat, will talk about in a moment. So, Professor Uslat, you can go ahead and make your presentation with regard to this exciting program that we have developed together. And later we will see the fellows who've come up with that program. Over to you, Just.
Great, thank you very much, Amos. Jennifer, I would like to share my screen in a moment. Will you be able to make me co-host, please? Tafnit already mentioned, so Tafnit Asman, also thank you very much for the opening words, both personally and on behalf of Innovations for Poverty Action and JPAL. As Tafnit mentioned, you are in Nairobi visiting your parents. I'm based in the Netherlands, where I'm a professor at Utrecht University. I'm currently visiting my parents in Sweden, and I even had to borrow this shirt from my dad for this morning's presentation. So what I will do is I will take a moment to give a little bit of context to the project that has brought us together here this morning. And so the main purpose of the CIPA project is to support fellows, academics, researchers working at research institutes, universities across East Africa, to support them develop courses to teach the next generation of African students on the use of impact evaluation methods. And as was alluded to in the presentations by Asman, Tafnit, and Amos, a big challenge or opportunity is to make sure that there is much greater involvement of African scholars in the generation of research and the use of that research for policy purposes. And this project tries to support that by supporting the next generation of students. What I want to do is just take a few moments to provide some context to this project. It was already discussed to some extent in the previous presentations. Let me share my screen. I believe you're able to see my screen at the moment. So, and I should thank also SAS, the Sint Antonius Stichting in the Netherlands, and the Utrecht Foundation for making this possible. So just to give it a little bit of historical context, why this project, why today, and how did we get there? And I'll try to be brief, and I'm sure I'll lose some nuance along the way, and forgive me for doing so. So now, why are we here? Well, I think it's important to emphasize we're here because there's a lot of evidence, and we strongly believe that the use of impact evaluations can contribute to some of the major challenges that we face around the globe. I've highlighted here the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and in each of these, the scientific evidence brought about by these impact evaluations have brought new insight, new ideas, innovation that helps us tackle these. And so that's why we're doing that, to ultimately improve the lives, and particularly of those who are most vulnerable. Now, as you will all know, the recognition for this work came in particular, and an important part of that was the awarding of the Nobel Prize recently to Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Duflo, and Michael Kramer for their experimental approach to alleviating global poverty. And I would just like to share with you a very short message from one of the 3 Nobel Prize winners, Michael Kramer. Let me see if that works. Here he comes. Are you able to see are you able to see Michael at the moment or no? Christine?
Nothing yet.
Oh, nothing yet. Okay, then I'll need to just stop sharing, then share again. Let's see, I'm not sure if this is going to work. I'll continue, and then there was a short message. I'm not sure if this will work. So let me, for the sake of time, let me simply continue, and then the presentation. And what I was going to show you. So Michael had a short message, and perhaps we can share with you a link afterwards, supporting the project and the goals that it sets forth. Now, so as I said, I would take a historical approach. So let me just go back quite a long time in history. So, and this is one of these slides where I said, I will lose the nuance, but let me just say it anyway. So the kind of post-World War II approach in economics to solving complex challenges can in some ways be summarized with this slide. So a very theoretical, very mathematical focus to coming up with solutions to addressing some of these complex challenges. Now, and of course, that's important and generated important insights. But as we've also seen over the last 30, 40 years, intention and action when it comes to human beings are not always aligned. And that makes it difficult sometimes to predict what the outcome will be of well-intended interventions. And I think a good example of that comes from the work that Michael and others started in the 1990s, for which they later received the Nobel Prize. The idea was, okay, well, perhaps using the very theoretical approach doesn't always provide the insights that we need. It doesn't always tell us kind of what happens when the rubber hits the road, so to say. And so he had the idea. Now, of course, he was not the first one. There's a history of this, particularly in the medical sciences, to do randomized controlled trials, randomly assigning the intervention to some, for example, schools and not to others. And an example of this actually comes from Kenya, one of the very first randomized controlled trials that gave rise to this movement. And I'll point to that in a moment in a bit more detail. It was this evaluation where a project that had been ongoing in the Busia area in Western Kenya by an NGO providing textbooks to schools. And textbooks is one of these examples that the NGO was not alone in providing textbooks. There were many projects, quite frankly, around the world, also especially by the World Bank. And I worked at the World Bank for a while. And it was well intended, and there's good reason to believe that the provision of textbooks will help students. Well, a randomized evaluation was conducted and actually found that it didn't, at least not for most of the students. Only the students who had high scores at the beginning, they benefited from the textbooks. And this finding, in many ways, it was a negative finding for this particular intervention, but I think it was a positive finding for impact evaluations, because it turned our mindset upside down and say, hey, now here's something that should have worked, but it didn't, and we rigorously demonstrated that it didn't. And so why? And so that also generated, A, a lot more interest in randomized controlled trials, and B, also along the way, questions of why. Why are some projects working and not others? And I made a remark at the beginning saying, there was this very mathematical approach. We moved away from that, and if you look currently at the field, there's actually kind of a combination of the two happening, where we're also using randomized controlled trials to again think in much more greater detail about theory and how the world works. So this negative finding led to very positive results for the use of impact evaluations. Another one to just briefly mention from a little bit later, but from the same period, is an evaluation in Mexico, Progressa, where they randomly assigned a new conditional cash transfer program providing cash support to poor families to attend school and attend health clinics. And so this was also an evaluation of a program that was highly sensitive, providing cash to poor people. Does that work? It also took up a lot of the budget of the Mexican government, but this randomized controlled trial found that it worked. And so here, an example of the conditional cash transfers in Mexico and Brazil in 1997, as a result of this evaluation and others that followed over the course of the next 14 years, led to a quick expansion of these types of programs. And now we are seeing second generation programs also looking at unconditional cash transfers. Now, as impact evaluations grew, now it was mentioned, IPA was founded in 2002 as an example of an infrastructure that was developed to support these type of impact evaluations. Now, one example, IPA, a year later, JPEL followed, that was founded by Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee, two of the Nobel Prize winners, and others that followed later. For example, in 2011, ID Insight was mentioned, is another one of these organizations supporting the implementation and policy uptake of impact evaluations. Now, in 2013, again, as an example of how the field has grown, the American Economic Association started the Rct Registry. And as you see at the top of the slide, this picture was taken yesterday, currently lists 4,876 studies. So this massive growth of randomized controlled trials. However, now to Amos's point, if you look at the number of many of these are conducted on the African continent. But if you look at the number of African scholars that are involved in these impact evaluations, it falls far short of the number of impact evaluations that are being conducted. And that's really the motivation to this project. We've seen this big growth in the use of impact evaluations. We see an institutional infrastructure, and I highlighted a few examples that have come alongside with it, but there's still this big gap in participation by African scholars. And through this project, we're trying to focus on the next generation of impact evaluation scholars, namely the students that are attending university today. And that's the background to this project, and we're very excited that we have a group of about a dozen fellows from across East Africa that have taken up the challenge and have been working over the past year to develop impact evaluation courses to deliver at their institutions in the coming period. And we hope that this will be a seed that will grow bigger and will also lead to new collaborations. Let me stop there. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Joost, for that. I think Christine had to drop off, but I would just want to let Anne share the video. We've been able to do it, so let us listen to that first, then we can announce fellows.
Ready when you are.
Thank you. I'd like to first thank Joost for giving me the chance to speak to a budding community of development economists. I was really excited to hear about the NIERA project. I'm very enthusiastic about the project's aim to equip the next generation of African researchers and policymakers with the tools needed to conduct rigorous evaluations. One thing I've learned from my career is that the experimental method and the techniques you'll learn on this course are useful not only for evaluation, but also for developing innovations that can go on to have huge impact. Whether you go on to take jobs in academia, in government, in business, or in NGOs, I'm sure that the skills that you'll build here will enable you to think about how to develop solutions to the social problems you encounter and how to evaluate those solutions and improve and refine them over time. I look forward to hearing about the great work that you all will do in the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that, Anne. So I just want to transition into announcing who the fellows are. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Nyakinya. I'm the program manager for NIERA, and I've been with NIERA for about 3 years right now. So I've seen us grow, and there's quite a bright future ahead for NIERA, CIPA, and all the initiatives that we plan to do. I'm happy to announce the fellows, the CIPA fellows who are part of this initiative that my colleagues have alluded to, and the great work they're doing at their various institutions. So let me share my screen to show you who we are working with. Can you all see? Okay, yes. I'll start off. Oh, great. No particular order. Our Ugandan fellows, we have Dr. Aisha Naniti, who is a lecturer in the Development of Policy and Development Economics Department, the School of Economics at Makerere University in Uganda. We have Damaso as well, who serves as a research scientist and head of data measurement and evaluation with APHRC. We have John, who is a lecturer of economics at Makerere University, Uganda. So those are our 3 fellows we're happy to work with in Uganda. Next, from Tanzania, we have Christina File, who is a lecturer and an economist at the Institute of Social Work in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Dr. Wana, who is a program officer with the National AIDS Control Program in the Ministry of Health in Tanzania. So we have those 2 with us from Tanzania. From Ethiopia, we're working with Getachew Kasa, who is an assistant professor of reproductive health in the College of Health Sciences, Debre Marcos University in Ethiopia. Then we have Solomon Zena, who is a postdoctoral fellow and adjacent assistant professor at the University of Gondar in Ethiopia. We have Dr. Alabel as well, who's a senior research fellow at the Policy Studies Institute in Ethiopia. From Rwanda, we are happy to work with Professor Janine Kondo, who's a managing director for the Center for Impactive Innovation and Capacity Building for Health Information and Nutrition in Rwanda, and Professor Alfred Bizoza, who's an associate professor in agriculture economics from the University of Rwanda. And last but not least, our Kenyan fellows, we have Sam Muhula, who is a technical lead for the monitoring, evaluation, and research manager at Amref Health Africa in Kenya, and Udoni Nganga, who is an assistant lecturer at Kenyatta University and Strathmore University. So we're happy to announce those fellows that we are working with in the CIPA program, and we hope that we can continue to engage with them as we now move to implement, to implement these programs within their various institutions that I have mentioned in here. So we are now at the point of having a brief health break. Then when we come back, we will dive into a panel discussion with our very dynamic panel members to talk about equipping the next generation of impact evaluation scholars in Africa. So can I say we break off for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes actually. We group at, it's now 11:50, we group at 12 sharp, Kenyan time, that's Nairobi time, so 12 midday, we group, so we can start off with the panel session and then we move to the next activities. Sounds good? But wait, I see there's a question. Before we break off, I see there's a question that we might want to respond to. The panelists, if you have seen that as well, but I could just quickly read it and anyone can jump in to respond. So there's a question from Clement who asks, he feels it's interesting to emphasize targeting. Let me rephrase it again. He's saying excellent contributions on the need to strengthen capacities in impact evaluation so far, but it would be interesting to emphasize targeting within the African context, for example, impact evaluation of infrastructure projects, especially within transport sector and regional interventions, which are inadequate. It would be interesting also to know how such areas will be considered in this new intervention. So I would allow you, could you want to take that on, or Amos?
I'm happy to say something about it, and perhaps Amos, you can add. I think one of the ways, and thank you for raising this question. I think one of the ways, the point that you're making, targeting is important, and there are certain areas where kind of a body of evidence is needed. You highlight the transport sector. Now on the side of, and perhaps Tavneet and Asman can jump in here, but on the side of IPA and JPEL, there are groups you're organized within sector groups as well, isn't it? Where alongside certain areas, you're trying to build a body of evidence and support that through specific initiatives, like in this case, the jobs initiative focusing on jobs. Tavneet, maybe you can add something about how within JPEL you're organized around particular areas. I'm not sure if Asman is still connected, but.
Yeah, we have sectors. So there's a whole host on the website: agriculture, jobs, firms. I'm going to miss a few for sure. The digital one is a new one, education, health. And then under these sectors, not all of them, but most of them have some sort of initiative that has a pot of money. Like I said, we're slowly growing the set of initiatives that have African Scholar programs, but we kind of split work out by the sectors. And then we have sector chairs that kind of try to synthesize all the results and create all the policy briefs that you see come out that synthesize results from a sector.
Thank you, Tavneet. Amos, would you like to add anything from the side of NIERA?
Just to say that the project we are launching today is highly targeted. I've seen the question. It's actually targeted because we are implementing it in 11 different institutions, research universities, that's institutions of higher learning, as well as research institutions. And what we've done is also to try and see what are the specific requirements for the audiences in this case. And so the Clement's question on contextualization falls into place. And unfortunately, I don't think we have a contextualization for infrastructure, but we've got, I think, agriculture, education, health, and many other areas. But I think that's also an emerging area that we would also want to see how best can we respond to that need. Thank you.
Great. Could we break off and regroup in, let me say 7 minutes. So at 12:02, we regroup for the plenary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Grab water or coffee and come back. Great, thank you, welcome, and thank you for staying on. As mentioned, I want us to just go straight into the plenary we have. We have 4 distinguished guests to speak on this session. I will allow them to introduce themselves, but we are going to engage with Mr. John Bosco Kalisa, Dr. Aisha Nanyiti, Dr. Stephen M. Kibusi, and Professor Janine Kondo. So I'll give them a few minutes shortly to introduce themselves, but essentially just what my colleagues have alluded to, we are trying to equip the next generation of African impact evaluation scholars. We've talked about recent studies done by NIERA on, just indicating, disclosing the very technical capacities that are limiting academics to conduct impact evaluation, and also just to use this to inform policies and programs at institutional and individual levels. So these are the things we want to discuss with our speakers who have experience in this area. But let me first off give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Let me start with you, Dr. Aisha.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, CIPA, for having me. My name is Aisha Nanyiti. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Policy and Development Economics at the School of Economics, Makerere University. Founded in 1992, Makerere University is a prestigious one and ranks highly among the top best universities in Africa. Particularly the department where I'm based engages in high quality research and training on critical policy and development topics. Specifically, my research interests, though not limited to, include energy, labor, credit, and insurance markets in developing contexts. Thank you, and over to you, moderator.
Thank you so much. Let me hand it over to Mr. John Bosco Kalisa.
Good morning, everyone. Maybe if I could just switch on my video, although the network was a bit weird today. Good morning, everyone. I'm called Lamek Wesonga. I'm representing Mr. John Bosco Kalisa, who is the CEO of the East African Business Council here in Arusha, Tanzania. He expresses his apologies. He was caught up in an abrupt meeting which came up. He had an engagement which came up abruptly, and he requested me to step in for him. Nevertheless, maybe as a way of introduction of EABC. EABC is the umbrella body of the private sector organizations within the East African community, are mainly representing the apex bodies of the private sector within the EAC partner states, that is Burundi, Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, South Sudan. Our main mandate is to advocate for policy reforms within the integration process of the East African community. We spearhead the private sector agenda to ensure that the much desired economic integration of our region is actually realized. So once again, we are happy to be here and to take part in this key engagement. We thank you.
Thank you for that. Sorry to hear John Bosco will not be able to attend, but glad to have you on board with us. We are trying to get Professor Janine Kondo on, and please help with that. And also we have another panelist who should be able to join us shortly. But I think we could just already start the discussion with the two we have, then once they come in, they can pick it up from there as well. So thank you for the introductions and for the programs that you work on. We appreciate you once more for being here. I just want us to discuss a few points just leading into this theme of, equipping the African impact evaluation scholars in Africa. And let me start off with you, Aisha. You are a lecturer at Makerere University, yes, and a CIPA fellow. So we understand you're very passionate about ensuring that evidence is incorporated in programs and policies, and different actors actually get a chance to use this evidence-informed policies, essentially. So based on, by virtue of you being a CIPA fellow and being passionate about this agenda, what are some of the, in your view, what are some of these opportunities that you can see are untapped, where we can strengthen connections between, young scholars and different actors? Because we have people who work in private sector, representative from ABC has talked about it, the private sector, we have people who work in academia, and then we also have now these scholars that we are reaching out to, that we want to equip their skills. But sometimes there's this limiting, should I say, platform where they can connect, or where we can strengthen these connections. So I ask your thoughts on what are some of these untapped opportunities to strengthen connections between young scholars and different actors in increasing the demand for and supply of impact evaluation in Africa. Dr. Anyiti.
Thank you, Jennifer, for this question. Among the untapped opportunities may include, there's the passion between the actors to work together. This passion is evident, especially when you think of researchers in academic institutions and staff in government offices. There's a passion to work, they need to work together. This is shown whenever these two groups meet, they need the passion to want to work together. This is shown especially by the managers, but also by the staff themselves. So this means that these two groups are willing to commit time and human resources. And in some cases, they may also be willing to commit some financial resources. So this passion is one thing to tap into. Then the other thing could be the development agents, as also one of the stakeholders, may be more willing to fund research or impact evaluations that are fronted as joint evaluations between staff in academic institutions, but also policymakers. And this is because such evaluations or such research initiatives promise a higher ownership of findings or recommendations, and therefore promise higher adoption of recommendations. So we could also try to tap into that willingness or more willingness by funders to fund joint evaluations that may be undertaken between the researchers and also policymakers. And this is because the researchers could be can contribute the analytical aspect, while the policymakers can command the public level and community level infrastructure that is actually very much needed during execution of impact or research evaluation initiatives. Thank you, Jennifer. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I think you've talked about having involvement of different actors, just even giving them that opportunity to have joint research work and research projects and collaborations as some ways to strengthen these connections within the region, and not just only within Africa, but also having north-south collaborations to strengthen this and also just improve what we are trying to do here. I'd like to check first in the attendees. I understand one of our panelists is in the attendees. Is Janine, if you could raise your hand and see if we could maybe interact with you through there, if you're not able to put you on as a panelist. Let's give you a few seconds to raise. Oh, I see she's on. Great. Okay, let me allow her to introduce herself, then we can continue with the questions.
Hello, good morning, everyone. And I've been following up on the presentation from Youth and others, very, very interesting. I guess a lot of opportunity, not only for scholars, but also for everyone, policymakers, researchers, media. And this is the first time I'm hearing the connection between the research output to policy improvement. And that has been a gap for many years. My name is Janine Chondo. I'm Associate Professor of Public Health at the University of Rwanda as a part-time, but also at the University. I'm currently leading Seeking. It's an institution that actually tries also to create those links, being part of different global groups such as Gavi Evaluation Advisory Group or Global Fund, TURG, Technical Evaluation Research Group. We still see the gap. We see gaps that Just alluded to. We don't have a lot of local institutions, African institutions involved in research, involved in impact evaluation, involved in all these fundings that we see out there. I think time has come that we all stand together to bring that aspect that was missed for many years. Over to you, and very, very happy and honored to be here with you, Jennifer. Over.
I think while we just continue with you while we have you, then we can move on to the next speaker. You've talked about these different organizations you're with and just trying to advocate for use of evidence and research outputs to inform on impact evaluation and so on, to inform the evidence-based policy continuum. And then I see you've also worked with the Ministry of Health, so you have the government arm experience and also being a professor in different regional and international universities. What are your thoughts on how researchers, policymakers, development practitioners, all these players can contribute to scaling impact evaluation research initiatives in Africa?
Thank you, Jennifer. As I said, all your questions are very, very important and actually are talking about the real issues that everyone has. Based on my experience while I was at the government, leaders don't have time to read research output or to understand the chi-square or p-value and stuff like that. And I guess also at the same time, researchers, we don't make it easy for them, right? We use jargons a lot and sometimes even things that are uncorrelated. So one way that I thought, being both in academic, but also in government, was to create those links. Researchers need to have time not only to run research, but also understanding the gaps and use those gaps as opportunities. Understanding the gap from the Minister of Health, from the Minister of Finance, from the Minister of Agriculture, sitting with them. Some areas that I found that could be replicated is still at infancy stage here in Rwanda, was the presence of researcher academicians in what they call working groups. In different ministries, you have working groups that are developing the policies or understanding an issue or understanding the data. I think having the presence of academicians in there will help, first of all, tighten the research toward the gaps that are actually existing within the ministry. That's point number one. Point number two is most of the policies that we do, because we are all running and don't have time, everything is emergency. You can give the example of COVID now. You can talk to the minister telling them about the policy to be developed. I think what we need to do is to evaluate, be able rapidly to evaluate, could be after even the policy is implemented, to understand how the policy actually worked or didn't work, to inform the policy makers whether or not the strategies are being implemented are actually evidence-based, right? So I think that's feeding the loop is missing between the ecosystem that exists between the local researchers, academic institutions, and the policymakers. Over to you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's just also tying to what Aisha talked about, making sure we co-develop these research agenda with these different actors to ensure they even have the appreciation of what we are trying to do. Thank you so much, Janine. Now over to Mr. John Bosco's representative. Sorry, I missed out on your name. Apologies for that. But I want to hear your way in. You've talked about EABC, and it's a private organization. You work with private sector and also the government in promoting regional and local initiatives within East Africa. So I just want to understand your thoughts in terms of bringing different stakeholders who are working in the evidence-informed policy ecosystem. So you talk about those in academia, those in the private sector where you work, those in the government space, how they can all collectively contribute to building the future of the future generation of the young East African scholars in Africa. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Maybe to just mention my name, I'm called Lamek Wesonga, and I'm in charge of policy at the East African Business Council. Yes, like you rightly stated, we do engage quite a number of stakeholders, ranging from government to the academia and others. And in all this, we try to create that kind of atmosphere in which we base our arguments to the policymakers through research. Research is a very critical element. We have seen it when it comes, for example, to the policy-making processes at the EAC level, both from technical to the topmost, which is the summit. Quite a number of positions are brought forward by the governments of the 6 partner states, but with the time, they tend to take a lot of time, and what brings about that is lack of this evidence, lack of research to inform the positions. So what we have come out to do as the umbrella body of the private sector to support the policymakers in trying to create a favorable environment for business is we have tried to partner with some other development partners, even within our own industry players, in trying to bridge this gap. So how do we fast track the process of policy making process at the regional level? We try to ensure that we develop papers which then we can submit to the policymakers such that they can be of help in trying to bridge the gap in terms of information, in terms of the statistics. So that is what we have tried to do as a regional board, and we still continue to do that. And then in terms of industry, academia linkages, I think they need to bridge the gap between the required skills by the private sector, public institutions, and the development partners. I think is something which is very, very key. We have previously, and we still partner with the Inter-University Council of East Africa. And why we partner with the Inter-University Council of East Africa is we want to create this industry academia linkages. One, the academia supports the industry in producing the right skills which the industry desires. So if there are courses, we try to engage them to tailor the courses to what the industry would be needing at that particular moment. So this kind of collaboration is still going on. I think about last year, if not I think it was 2019, when we held an engagement, a consultative engagement with the universities from across the ESCLs, University of Rwanda in Burundi, Makerere University, University of Nairobi, Kenyatta, Dar es Salaam, and many others. So what we wanted to do is now how do we kind of come up with an institutionalized framework of working. But of course, thanks to COVID, we have not been so up to date with our kind of institutionalized framework with the universities, but it's something which we really want to take forward in trying to bridge this gap. Then the need for the creation of productive linkages between universities, tertiary institutions, and government in order to fund capacity building and training students on the need for evidence-based research across the various sectors which we have. I think from our members from across the region, some have done quite a number of initiatives towards this. The African Development Bank has been supporting, especially when it comes to internship placements, trying to build the skills of some of our graduates who are coming from the university. So they need to support this kind of capacity building. I think is something which is very critical. And then setting up research and development departments by private sector firms to encourage the uptake of impact evaluation by young scholars. Our engagement with our industry players is that not many of them have invested in research. So it's a very big gap if your decisions are not being based on research as a firm. And what we have always done is to encourage them to ensure that some of these research and development initiatives are being set up to help them in knowing what is good, what is not good, and how do you contribute to inform a certain kind of process. So partly these are some of the initiatives we are working on, but going forward and in line with our economic integration agenda of the region is we are supporting the policymakers in trying to create this kind of evidence such that we reduce on the gap in making decisions at the regional level. I thank you.
Thank you, Lamek. You've talked about supporting different institutions with different stakeholders. You also talked about institutionalizing some of these initiatives, and I think that's been what CIPA is trying to do, as we are trying to embed impact evaluation curriculum and courses in different research institutions and universities across East Africa. So that's actually quite important in terms of building the future generation of young IE scholars. Thank you. We had one more panelist. Can I just ask the attendees if he's on there? Dr. Stephen Kibusi, you'll raise your hand so that we don't leave you out. But in the meantime, feel free to post your questions on the Q&A session. Someone will be monitoring that. And also, if you want to raise your hand, you can have the opportunity to raise your hand as well. Final call for Dr. Stephen Kibusi. We don't want to miss you out. Okay. But I see we have a question from Professor Alfred Bizoza. You can speak. Please speak, Prof. Just to confirm, are you able to speak from your end? Okay, if not, you can also put it on the chat box. The panelists will be able to respond from there. I had one final discussion I'd like to have with the panelists, and then also invite people to ask questions, to raise their hands and ask questions. The whole premise of CIPA and what we're talking about is the capacity.
Can you hear me now, Jennifer?
Oh yes, great. Proceed.
I think we are not controlling all the microphone. They are controlled somewhere here behind.
No worries.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for the insights and inputs from the panelists. One is a suggestion, which maybe panelists need to reflect further. we are talking that I think now in Africa, different countries, we have different initiatives of monitoring and evaluation, policy research. One of the challenges I see is the way we are isolated. There is no a way of having strong coalition so that we can have at least those skills that are still preliminary or low be combined so that we become more competitive. How do we put in place a framework where initiatives already in Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, so we have a platform like Eastern African Community, how do we benefit from that? So at least we are able to bring those initiatives already in place. I know like Professor Janine has already initiative, I have the initiative, in Kenya you have initiative. There are different initiatives in the region, but how do we bring them together? How do we benefit from the existing Eastern African Community platform? So at least we know if we need to evaluate a project in Rwanda, we can easily get resources from Tanzania or Uganda or Kenya, and the other way around. So I think there is other government entities are benefiting from these platforms, but at a certain point, we as academia research practitioners, I don't think we are using this in an optimum way. So how do we benefit from these existing platforms? How do we combine already the existing efforts so that we can leverage together and build the capacity we are talking about? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any one of my panelists can take on the question, Dr. Aisha, Janine, or Lamek, feel free.
I can take it.
Okay.
Yeah, so
moderator, just I wanted, if you allow it, I wanted just to get 1 minute before the one of the speaker to make a comment.
Yes.
And respond. I know my colleague. I need to apologize. My colleague Lamek is representing EABC.
Yes.
But I wanted to give just 2 minutes my input and submission, which can also be reflected on. At the moment, I'm seated at the board of Inter-University Council of East Africa.
Sorry, who are we speaking with? Sorry, because I'm just seeing Anne Minor.
No, this is John Bosco Karisa. I'm the CEO of East African Business Council.
Happy to have you.
Yes, thank you, moderator, and I really want to thank you and thank the organizer for this opportunity. I wanted just to give to give a reflection on what the previous panelist has mentioned in terms of platform. We do have the platform, but the issue we've been having is the way we coordinate ourselves in terms of leveraging those platforms. As I mentioned, in current trade, we have this inter-university council, which brings all academia, all universities under one platform, under one roof. How do we leverage that so that they're able to enhance the academia, they're able to enhance research, which is also relates to my organization. I represent that the challenge we've been having is data-driven research. How do we leverage data? Where is data? Because there has been a scant of information in terms of what we need, what we pick from academic, for what we pick from the research, but the coordination failure. How do we address the coordination failure? I think this is an opportunity, an opportune time for us to ensure that we agree on the way forward in terms of putting the resources together, building the platform already we have, and raise our voice in terms of how this platform would be able to address some of the challenges that is impacting the region. I see this is a good initiative, and I'm fully in support of the initiative. My colleague Lamek will intervene and give highlights what we are doing, and our vision is, and on our vision as well as the mission in terms of championing this agenda, which is critical and which is very important. I submit, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. I think Lamek has already given us an overview of what you're doing. Thank you so much. Janine, do you want to still weigh in?
Yeah, sure. I think there's, first of all, let's commend the effort that NIERA is doing in getting all impact evaluators potential together in East Africa. So I think we should really thank you, Amos, and many other who are doing all these efforts to make sure that impact evaluation researchers are all together. So this is something that I think we should learn from. And I think the question from Professor Alfred Bizosa is related to other research capacity, that I think this is something that could be easily brought to EAC as a platform, EAC or many other platforms that exist across Africa, to not only look at opportunities, but also knowing each other, understanding, mapping who is where, which capacity I can fetch that I don't have within my institution, that I can get from my colleague in Uganda and others. So what is happening currently is, through WhatsApp, people will send you messages, you want to partner with us, you want to be part of this opportunity. For example, currently there is a CDC Africa call for application on vaccine effectiveness. I didn't know where to go, and I asked Sam on WhatsApp, hey, give me contact of AMREF of PSGR. So I think there's a need to start mapping who is there and where these guys or where these institutions are working from, which reach, and what are the capacity, what are the strengths, what are the opportunities. I don't know if NIERA will take that on board, as in, I know it's beyond your scope of work, but I think there is a really need to map up, especially when it's come to working in using IT, using ICT now. No one can travel with COVID, but we need to trust each other and also move on. When it's come to the data, I think this is a really, really big problem. We don't have access to the data, be it, at EAC level, even at country level at some points. We just finished an evaluation on COVID-19 status that was led by AERC. And clearly all researchers were looking at issues related to the data. How can we create repository, things like DHS that are already out there, or any other available data, to create a repository on existing data and those who can, the data that can be publicly available to researchers. I think there's need there to a data sharing platform that is completely missing. We saw it coming with COVID. You can more or less talk about cases in each country, new deaths, new cases, and so forth, using the worldometer. But a lot is lacking. I know Africa Academic of Science, they're also trying to put all the clinical research in Africa together as a platform. I think the rest of the data sharing platform is completely missing. I don't know if this is a call for NIERA or for those who are at EAC to start thinking about those specific questions on data sharing, but also research platform. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you. We're talking a lot about having, their existing platforms and those that people are aware of and some are not aware of these, and just mapping different initiatives so that we can have a coordinated approach to how we're doing things. And it just ties to even what we are speaking on, some barriers that hinder capacity building efforts for IE researchers in Africa. So Dr. Aisha, would you want to give your thoughts on any additional barriers you feel? The panel has talked about platforms, mapping out different initiatives, but any way you want to make for any additional barriers that may hinder, capacity building efforts for IE researchers in Africa?
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. In terms of barriers, one thing is attitude. We know that experience is important in impact evaluations. However, often when you're thinking of maybe designing a government program, evaluation of a government program, you encounter arguments like, we cannot do that, it's too academic, and it's diversionary in a way, and sometimes it comes from economists themselves. So there's that attitude problem, and we need to work on it by continuously engaging in capacity building, such that we remind ourselves of first best practice, and so that we can actually use it in practice. So the attitude issue is a big problem. Then the second one is accreditation. Accreditation takes long. When you think of capacity building and impact evaluation and the kind of approval we need to have in practice, then it would be cost effective and more sustainable if impact evaluation modules were embedded in programs offered at higher institutions of learning. However, accreditation takes long, approval levels are many, and sometimes programs are not open to additions. So it becomes easier maybe at the point of when programs are being redesigned or new programs are being developed. However, the cost implications for such activities make them rare occurrences in academic institutions. So we'll need support, be it financial or coordination-wise, support from other actors like policymakers and government agents to kind of support these processes such that impact evaluation modules can be embedded in these programs at higher institutions of learning. So those are the kind of hindrances I can think of. Maybe other panelists can add. Thank you. Over to you, Jennifer.
Great, that's great. Actually, I'm just looking at time. I want to check if there are any questions from the participants. Anyone would like to raise their hand or pose a question on chat? I see your hand is raised. Anne, could you allow the Melkamu to speak? There's a question there. Since Alfred said there's a science to this. Hold on, we'll take a question from Melkamu, and then I think Alfred has another question from Melkamu, then Anthony, then we'll let Professor Alfred speak.
Mine was the previous hand, sorry.
Okay. Okay. Anthony, I think you can now, your mic is enabled, please ask your question.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you for the presentation. My question is concerning the kind of collaboration that can be fostered from this kind of engagement. How do we strengthen this collaboration from here so that the academia in different countries are able to work together to ensure that we do the impact evaluation that is desired at this level? Thank you.
Okay, let's take on Melkamu's question, then I'll assign.
Okay, thank you very much. I am very interesting to participate such kind of launching ceremony. Thank you very much. How to engage and what is the thematic areas of impact evaluation and how to create collaboration with our university. I am the director of research and technology transfer in Debre Marcos University. There are a number of researches have been worked by researchers, and a number of policies are implemented. Some are positive and some are negative. Then what kind of impact evaluation and when and how to collaborate with you? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me call on Professor Amos to respond to the question from Melkamu, and then Anthony's question will be, anyone from the panel can take that on.
Thank you for that. And on the question with regard to how we can work together, and I just want to bring together first our original thought on the network of impact evaluation researchers in Africa. We said, look, we've got researchers here who've got different experiences in different areas in different African countries. And we said, okay, can we have an outfit, because NIERA is literally the beginning point. Can we have an outfit, a connection where we can have peer-to-peer learnings, where we can take joint projects where we can take research initiatives together, cross-country research across different disciplines and say, hold on, can we do this? But most importantly, recognizing the need not to duplicate what others are doing. And that's why I said within the needs assessment and the outcomes thereof, that it is critical for us to work together as an ecosystem so that what someone is doing, the other person is not necessarily doing it, but is doing it in a more enriched manner. And if I've got to do something, I don't have to duplicate. I can go for it and get certain tools, methods, and all that from another organization that is doing relatively the same thing. So I think for me, this is a very good beginning point where we are getting researchers to have symposia. In NIERA, for example, we do have a lot of symposia with regard to the different projects that are taking place. Members hold peer-to-peer meetings. For example, within CIPA, I think about 10 different peer-to-peer initiatives where people talk about it and say, this is the way we are doing it in Rwanda, this is the way we are doing it in Tanzania, and then the Kenyans can learn and implement it in their own way. So there is no specific answer to that, but the whole thing lies in collaboration and people creating communities of practice like we are doing in NIERA to be able to respond to that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Prof has also answered Anthony's question, unless you still have any unanswered issue from that question. Great, I'm just looking at time. Any final burning question? In the meantime, I want panelists to give us their final thoughts, final remarks as we close off this plenary and move on to the next. But any other burning question can be put on the chat and we can pick it up after the end of this. Let me start off with Lamek. Final closing parting shot.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I think as we close out this session, I think it is critical that we need to invest in research as a way of supporting, for example, the young scholars attributed within this specific segment. And two, to also be able to support policymakers in making the right decisions which impact on the livelihoods of society. So it is very, very critical that we focus ourselves into research. Capacity building is very, very critical. From our perspective as EABC, I think it will be more than glad to collaborate with the CIPA, NIERA in trying to advance this agenda. As my CEO rightly mentioned, we are collaborating with the Inter-University Council, which is a very good initiative in trying to ensure that what is coming from the academic field is channeled through the IUCA to the ESC policy making processes. So in addition to our envisaged collaboration, we hope that we will closely work with you in advancing evidence-based research. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Isha?
Thank you, Jennifer. I think what is coming out of this discussion is the passion again, the passion to work together. People are willing to collaborate. Even here, we can feel that. So, and that needs to have a one-stop center rather than having people to look there and there to find some capacity. We could have a one-stop center where we can find the contacts we may need as we pursue the impact evaluation. So I don't know to what extent that is within the mandate of NIERA what extent it can contribute to that, but also any other department in any institution in East Africa could do that, and any professor could contribute to that. But there is that passion which we need to exploit. Then I will also take this opportunity to thank my students and colleagues who found time to tune in to this. Thank you very much. And thank you, NIERA and the organizers. Thanks to Joost, University of Utrecht for this. Thank you so much. Back to you, Jennifer.
Okay, and now Dr. Janine, final thoughts.
Thank you, Jennifer, and I'll start by saying that those are what you're doing is the opportunities not only for students but also researchers get together and explore more. So I can only thank you enough to put everything together. So I think I have 3 points that I would like to conclude with. The first one is policymakers are crying out for data. They need data for this decision. So if you're a researcher, if you're a student, just stand up, get out of your office, go find policymakers, talk to them, say, I have an idea, or I read this policy, but I think this should be the way to go. They are waiting for us. Involve ourselves in different existing groups, existing monitoring groups within the ministries, and try to get you out there and get involved to help them. They are all overwhelmed. My second point is, everyone here, I see 50 participants. Please follow up on NIERA. There are lots of opportunities out there that they offer, webinars, workshops, capacity buildings, creating curriculum, and so forth, linking up impact evaluators across Africa. I think just log in, maybe Jennifer or Anne can post in the Twitter account of NIERA, and I learn a lot. I'm still learning at my age on what NIERA is doing in terms of bringing that capacity that we are all talking about. Lastly, I think there are opportunities there, a lot for Africa that we can tap in. You just need to know where to knock. And I think NIERA or any other institution like CDC Africa and others, they're working toward getting those opportunities to African universities, African researchers, African institutions. Thank you so much. And then I'm very, very honored to be here. Thank you all for listening and giving us time to discuss this important issue. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you so much to my panelists for the discussion we've had. Without further ado, I'd like to invite our Secretary General, NIERA Secretary General, Dr. Samuel Oti, to give his closing remarks.
Thank you, Jennifer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. I have the very easy and I would say enviable task of just saying thank you to everyone for participating in this event. But before I do the formal vote of thanks, I'd just like to say one thing, and that is, I think it's a bit of a cliche, but that we should never despise humble beginnings. And I remember in many ways, the origin of this project and the origin of NIERA in general, and how it dates back to several years ago, when fellows like myself, East fellows like myself, Tony, Prof. Amos, we had opportunities that were brought to us by Joost, who at the time, Prof. Joost, who at the time was with the World Bank to conduct some workshops on impact evaluation in Kenya and in Rwanda and other contexts. And at the time, it didn't seem like a whole lot. Obviously, for us, we felt privileged to be part of that kind of opportunity. But who would have thought that several years down the line that we'll be talking about launching this kind of project on this kind of scale, and that has the potential to really transform the impact evaluation landscape, at least in the East African context. So my message to everyone is never despise humble beginnings, and to keep at it. I know this is just the beginning of I hope, greater things to come. And I think this particular initiative is very strategic for NIERA, because one question that we've tended to get from potential grantees, from potential funders, existing funders, is how are we going to be different? There has been a lot of attempt at, building capacity, not just on impact evaluation, but on evaluation in general. And how do we want to, what are our strategies for ensuring that these kind of methodologies in rigorous evaluation, for example, are institutionalized and perhaps even outlive us, right? And I believe that CIPA is one initiative that will help us institutionalize impact evaluation. So really pleased to be part of this effort. So now to the thanks. Obviously, I'd like to thank our special guests who gave the opening remarks, Mr. Suleiman Asman, the Regional Director for East Africa for IPA, Prof. Tavneet Suri, the Scientific Director for JPAL Africa, Prof. Jus Delat, Director, Utrecht Center for Global Challenges, and a special thanks to Prof. Michael Kremer, who a Nobel laureate, probably a very busy person, to take the time to record and provide his message of encouragement to us. I'd like to thank the fellows. I know that the work ahead is daunting, but just to wish you all the best and to provide you guarantees that the network NIERA is here for you and will be here to support you as CIPA is rolled out in your respective countries. I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us from wherever in the world you have joined us. I often joke that we are facing two pandemics right now in the world, the pandemic of COVID, obviously, but the pandemic of webinars as well. Every other minute, there's this webinar or that webinar. So for you to take the time to join us, we don't take it for granted, and we really appreciate that. And obviously to the Secretariat, Anne, Jennifer, and Prof himself, and Christina, who also doubles as our treasurer. Thank you for the effort. And our colleagues at Utrecht, thank you for the effort that you have put in bringing this event to all of us. So thank you very much for all your participation. I think the next agenda is networking and social. And I know maybe Anne, I don't know if there's a specific plan for that, so maybe I'll hand over to you. But I wish everyone well. And I hope that you continue to keep safe wherever in the world that you might be. Thank you very much. And back to you, Jennifer or Anne.
I'll hand it over to Anne to lead us. Thank you, Sam.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much to our speakers and our great attendees for joining us today. Mine is to definitely direct you to our knowledge center. Let me share that in a few minutes in the chat box. But that's just to say that we have quite a number of resources that have been collated for you to definitely interact with them and get to learn more on impact evaluation methods. And you've categorized that in terms of if you fall under the researchers bracket or the policymakers bracket or the media practitioners bracket. So just allow me to share the link in the next few seconds. Okay. And I'll also be showcasing just a few minutes. All right. So here is our knowledge center. So our resources have been classified based on our audiences. As you can see, we have quite a number of audiences. So once you click on any of the audiences, you'll be able to get a feel of what is in there in terms of resources. We have curriculums, we have PowerPoint presentations, and reference materials in impact evaluation. So mine is just to invite you to interact with our knowledge center, our newly designed knowledge center, and get to understand more on impact evaluation methods. Otherwise, thank you very much. I've shared the link on the chat box, and I'm also inviting you to join our social media platforms. At Twitter, we are NIERA_EA, and on LinkedIn, we are the Network of Impact Evaluation Researchers in Africa. Thank you very much. That's it from me.
So thank you, Anne. We have, I do hope everyone can see on the chat box, there, the link to the resource center where we can get there and engage much more. So with that, I think the official session is closed, but more discussions in the resource center site where people can interact and have the sharing. Thank you, everyone, and all the best.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.